Buongiorno signora Mirren.
Buongiorno.
A parte la fantastica masseria e la campagna pugliese, volevo sapere se aveva in concreto dei progetti a breve termine. Grazie.
Progetti cinematografici o televisivi.
Well, you know, I've just finished a film that directed by my husband called Love Ranch, in which I play the madam of a brothel in Nevada in the 1970s. And that was the first time I'd worked with him since the film that we met on in 1984. So that was a long time later, many years later, that we got to work together again. So that will be coming out in next year. And yes, I do have two projects that I'm hoping to work on, plus a project in the theatre in England. But I'm very superstitious, and and the deal hasn't been made yet, so I won't talk about them, but they will be announced very soon, if they happen.
Prego.
One of them, incidentally, is with a director who directed me in one of the prime suspects, John Madden, who went on to direct Shakespeare in Love, and I'm hoping that I can work with him again.
Prego.
Marzia Gandolfi, Duellanti.
Marzia, buongiorno.
Buongiorno. Avevo una domanda. Lei ha interpretato due regine, due epoche differenti. Volevo sapere, una cinematografica e una televisiva. Nel realizzare questo personaggio, questi due personaggi, lei trova che ci sia un elemento di continuità fra queste due figure femminili?
Oltre il nome, ovviamente.
Certo, absolutely. There is a continuity, very similar characters. I mean, completely different people, but very similar in their attitude to their role as queen. That they both took on that role with intense sense of self-discipline, absolute dedication, and once they were in that role, they were not going to let go of it for a second. There is absolutely a similarity, although completely different personalities and obviously completely different historical contexts. You know, the historical context of Elizabeth I and Elizabeth II are politically just, you know, miles and miles apart. But I could see that there was a very strong similarity. I would love to see in London two statues, one of Elizabeth I and one of Elizabeth II, because you know they were both crowned at the age of 25. They both took the throne at the same age, and I think it'd be so beautiful to have two beautiful little statues of these two young women, 25-year-old women, in their coronation robes, looking at each other across history. They have also both called Elizabeth, and both turned out to be the longest reigning monarchs in the history of my country. So there are many similarities.
Prego.
Sì, buongiorno. Liberazione e clandestino web. Signora Mirren, vorrei sapere cosa ne pensa della recentissima decisione della Chiesa Anglicana di dare l'episcopato anche alle donne. Grazie.
Oh, what a good one. You know, it's not so much women is one issue. The gay issue is another big problem within the Anglican Church. There are liberal elements within the Anglican Church that would like to welcome the possibility of gay marriage and certainly welcome women into the clergy. And then obviously, as in many churches or organizations, there is a conservative side to it. The conservatives in the Anglican Church in general come out of Africa and other, you know, countries outside of Britain, but you know, there is a very strong conservative side to it. So I mean, I'm wondering if we're looking possibly at a split within the Anglican Church. I think that's a very strong possibility, which, you know, all churches and religions have diversified and split. So I you know, each person in the question of religion is very important that people be true to their own beliefs And I think that if that necessitates a split in an organisation, so be it. The most important thing, I think, is for people to be true to themselves and to what they believe.
Massimo Frezza, Resort Premium.
Buongiorno innanzitutto e grazie per essere qui con noi oggi. E come suo grandissimo ammiratore la ringrazio personalmente e volevo chiederle se una delle cose che io amo di più nella sua incredibile capacità di passare da una parte così impegnativa come quella della regina Elisabetta, appunto, a ruoli brillanti che sono agli antipodi come quello di Calendar Girls. E la mia domanda era se la rivedremo in qualcosa di così estremamente divertente in cui è in grado assolutamente di spiazzarci come al solito. Grazie ancora.
Well, I have to say that the film I made with my husband, Love Ranch, is quite funny. It's not a comedy, but it is quite funny. Joe Pesci plays my husband. And exactly, the minute I say that, people start laughing because so, you know, a very estranged couple already. It's a wonderful film. I am hoping that it will find an audience because it is I think it's going to be very, very entertaining.
Jenny Eden from London. I was wondering why it's taken you so long to work with your husband for a second time, and how he approached you to suggest the role of a madam of a brothel, and what it was like working with him.
Well, it's very interesting when we got to the bed scenes that I had to have with my gorgeous young Spanish co-star, Sergio Peris Mencheta, who is a fabulous young Spanish actor. No, well, you know, he'd been looking for material for the two of us to do together all of these years. You know, it just worked out that when he made a film, Devil's Advocate, for example, there just was no role in it for me. And anyway, and then films that I was doing, you know, he was maybe not interested in directing, but all of these years he's been looking for material that we could do together. And finally he found this script that brought together everything that he loves and he's interested in. It's about boxing, and it's about America, and, you know, things that he could really, you know, identify with. And it had a wonderful role for me. So he really, you know, produced the film. He didn't finance it, but he found the financing. He fought very hard to get the film made, which I'm very grateful to him for.
Allora, un attimo solo, avremo Miriam Mauti, poi John Miller, poi il microfono è in fondo e poi torniamo avanti. Prego.
Buongiorno, io le volevo chiedere, visto che ha interpretato due regine, nell'anno in cui una donna ha tentato di diventare candidata come Presidente degli Stati Uniti, mi sembra inevitabile chiederle se ha imparato qualcosa sul rapporto tra le donne e il potere.
Well, very interesting. I mean, Elizabeth I has no Elizabeth II has no political power whatsoever. She has influence in the zeitgeist, is that the right word, of the country, but she has no literal political power at all. All of the power in Britain lies within the democratic system. Elizabeth I had total dictatorial political powers. So again, her powers didn't exist within any kind of a democratic system. So in the case of Hillary Clinton, Ségolène Royal, and all the other, you know, great female pretenders for the political throne that we're seeing, obviously come from a very different situation. And also, you know, an elected member of government is a very different person from a royal person. Royalty has to believe, and Elizabeth I believed that very strongly, and Elizabeth II, I think believes that. They believe very strongly that God has put them there. They are there because God has, and I can understand that attitude, although I'm not particularly religious, but I can understand. You think, why me? Why me? of all these millions of people, why am I the Queen? And they have to believe that it's God's decision that you should be in that role. Who becomes president of the, in spite of what George Bush believes, who becomes president of the United States of America is not the decision of God. It's the decision of the people. And so it's a very different situation.